The abolition movement was a reform during the 18th and 19th century. The purpose of the movement was to end slavery in Africans and people of African descent, as well as to end the Atlantic slave trade between Africa, Europe, and America. Following the French and American Revolution, equality and liberty were emphasized, in which sparked the idea that people may not have the right to take away an individual's liberty. People like Adam Smith began to challenge the public opinion in stating that hired labor is better for the economy versus slave labor. In the year 1787, abolitionists such as Granville Sharp and William Wilberforce began to tell the public stories about the horrific truth about slavery. These, among many individuals, also known as humanitarians, began the humanitarian movement with the goal to get rid of slavery in Europe in order to spread Christianity. Catholic popes and religious leaders led by example and freed their slaves in 1774 to show that slavery is an act that is against the laws of God and human nature. As a result, there was an increase in religious leaders and Christian scholars that began to condemn slavery on more grounds. Thus, the British government began the abolition movement. Now let's dive in to learn more about the abolition movement.
As you step into a little bit further into Olude Equiano's life, you come to see the dynamic relationship between scripture and colonialism. Equiano relates his experience of slavery to support abolitionism in Britain. In 1776, Equiano purchased his freedom, and in 1789 published the first edition of an interesting narrative of the life of Olude Equiano. This boldly portrays the cruel and inhumane patterns of the modern trafficking and enslavement of Africans in the New World. The Igbo Nation. Equiano believed that the Igbo were descended from ancient Jews and their religion was a modern survival of ancient biblical religion. He also points out that the descendants of the biblical Hebrew patriarchs eventually made their way to West Africa, producing the Igbo Nation, current-day Nigeria. His argument is explaining the Igbo nation as a people whose origins necessarily lay outside of Africa. This brings him to think that African religion, as an including religion from the Igbo, to be a Christian and ultimately have no place in the modern world.
We're talking about important people, right? Well, let me give you a nice briefing on three amazing men that fought for the abolishment of slavery. All a part of the British Empire, we will walk together through the start of slavery, the uprising against it, and the ending outcome. First, we have John Hawkins. Known for his sea legs, Hawkins was the sea captain for the land of Portugal. He is also said to have made the first English slaving voyage to Africa in the year 1562. With Queen Elizabeth I backing him, Hawkins made 3 journeys to Africa in just 6 years, capturing well over 12,000 slaves. Now the uprising begins, and we're going to talk about Udele Equiano. Equiano was a man of Nigeria before he and his family were kidnapped and brought into slavery. Soon, he gained his freedom by working hard and saving coins that he would sometimes receive. Although Equiano was never a quiet man, he was always willing to learn and make a difference. He is best known in history for forming the anti-slavery group named Sons of Africa, which campaigned for the abolishment of slavery through public speaking, writings, and lobbying Parliament. He even wrote an amazing autobiography in 1789 that describes his life in detail as he transformed from a slave to a free seaman, writer, and an anti-slavery advocate. Finally, we have Sir James Fox, who proposed a motion in Britain's Parliament in June of 1806 to completely end the act of slave trading. If you've been keeping up, that's 244 years between the first known slave voyage and the proposal to end slavery. Fox didn't just want to settle for the regulation. He wanted to completely end the act of slavery, calling it disgraceful traffic and a set boundary to our potential greatness. On March 25, 1807, he received that wish, and the bill went forth and was passed in front of Parliament.
The abolition of slavery was not a simple process, but one that extended for more than a century. It was due to factors such as slaves' rebellion, the development of Christian opposition to slavery, and the development of democratic tradition of human rights. The abolition began as the British Parliament abolished the slave trade in 1807. and then it spread throughout the British Empire, the French Empire, and finally in the United States, slavery was abolished in 1868. Enter. Slavery directly and indirectly allowed for great modern changes such as industrialization, the beginnings of capitalism, the rise of nations and nationalism, and rapid population growth. Also, the slave trade increased circulation of goods between Europeans and other parts of the world. It is important to acknowledge Africa's role in all these great modern changes, instead of viewing them solely as a result of European success and domination. The prosperity that came from the slave trade came at the expense of millions of Africans' lives and freedom.